of House of Hope. You guys are amazing, and we give you strength, and we want to do what we can to support you. So thank you very much. I got thinking this week, and I was actually listening to a message by from Eric Johnson from Bethel, and we, as most of you know, we're part of the Bethel Leaders Network, and we're very connected with Bethel, and we consider them our home away from home. And Eric said something this week that struck me, that in this time, we were made for a moment like this. Just like Esther, in the book of Esther, it says you were destined for a time, such a time as this. We as believers in Jesus, as followers in Jesus, we have been created for a time like this. Nowhere in our history, in the last 100 years, have we had something so quickly change our culture, change the way we do things, change just the day-to-day runnings. Our economy has been attacked, our personal economies, our health, our social interactions. And yet in the midst of this, we are equipped with what Jesus has given us. When Jesus was on this earth, he entered life in the middle of, at that point in history, he entered life and it was rough, it was hard. The Roman Empire was in full swing. There was political unrest, there was everything that was going on. And Jesus was born into that time. And what Jesus brought was a new way of doing things. He brought hope, he brought life, he brought himself, he brought heaven to earth. And so he was created, and he was actually, he was placed into history by the Father for such a time as that. And I really believe that what has been taking place, it's our time to actually rise up and shine. And I know Dan mentioned that last week as well. This is our time. This is our time to walk in faith. This is our time to walk in hope. This is our time. And we have been placed here to be a light in the world. And so what I want to do is I want to go through a few, I have 5 points this morning. And again, this is, I was listening to Eric, and they just struck within my heart. And so I wanted to kind of take what he had said and apply them to us here as a family within House of Hope. And so the first one so I'm going to back up a little bit. It's important for us to have perspective on what's going on. And I know there's a number of us, there's some families who, okay, it's going to take a sec. I'm getting ahead of myself, and I don't want to do that. I want to give some credence to and some time to this. For us at House of Hope, we are in a smaller community, and we are in a small city, and I can pretty much guarantee that there are cases of the virus here in our area, and there are some people that are saying we're taking too much. It's too drastic. It's too extreme. We're overreacting, and the media has made more of this than others. It's simply because of where we are, but we being good citizens of Cranbrook and being good citizens of British Columbia and of Canada are doing our part so that we can actually flatten that curve. And yet at the same time, we are in a time, regardless of whether there's cases, whether there is the virus in our area or not, or we're in a time that we're kind of in forced isolation. And so what I want to look at this morning is what does the road ahead look like? What is our part in doing this, in walking this out on a daily basis? So some of the things that really felt the Lord even just kind of challenging me with are, what's my heart like? What's my perspective in all things? And so I'm daily having to check my heart to see, okay, well, how is my heart in this? Is there fear? Is there anxiety? Am I excited? Am I, bored? I'm not bored. I have to check my heart. And then ask the Father to come in and show me what is necessary for this time. And so going forward, I'm going to ask this. This is the first point. If you're taking notes at home, what are we holding on to? What is God? What is not? What are we connecting our hope to? Because if you got to realize, if we're not connecting our hope to the Father in this season, then we're going to connect our hope to something else, and that's going to fail. So in this season, we need to find out what we're holding on to. What is satisfying us? What are we content in? And I want to look at Philippians 4, 11 to 13, and I'm going to read it out of the new the Passion Translation, the one that I always use. So I'm going to read it from now. So Philippians 4, 11 to 13. I'm not telling you this because I'm in need, for I have learned to be satisfied in any circumstance. And other versions, it says I've learned to be content. And we're going to talk about that in a second. I know what it means to lack, and I know what it means to experience overwhelming abundance. For I'm trained in the secret of overcoming all things, whether in fullness or in hunger, and I only find strength of Christ's, say it again, and I find that the strength of Christ's explosive power infuses me to conquer every difficulty. In some other versions, in most versions, it says I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But I love this because the translation is I find that the strength of Christ's explosive power infuses me to conquer every difficulty. So Paul was basically saying that I have hope. I have anchored myself in the hope of who Christ is. Christ is alive in me. Christ is alive in the world. And I'm hanging on to that hope. That is what I'm holding on to. And I want to challenge us that we have to actually hang on to that hope. Because if we hang on to the hope of our economy, that's going to fail. If we hang on to the hope that entertainment is going to fulfill me, that's going to fail. And none of these things are wrong in themselves, but that kind of hope is fleeting. But when we hang on to the hope that Jesus is alive, that Jesus is the one that's carrying us through then that explodes in us. So are we satisfied in this circumstance? Are we satisfied in Jesus? Are we content? And I get back, in all things I'm content, Paul says. I'm content in all seasons of life. We have the ability to be content with just the fact that Jesus is alive. And that contentment will be what we hang on to. So are we worried about what's going to happen next? Are we content in the fact that because of Jesus is alive in us, that we can actually walk out and do the things that he's called us to do? And then in him we have peace. So our peace is going to come from the fact that we have hope and of his life in us. So is that what we're holding on to? Is that what we're hanging on to? Or are we holding on to something else and hoping that that's going to fulfill what we have? So going forward, we should ask the question, what am I holding on to? In this season of uncertainty, in this season of social distancing, of physical distancing, what are we holding on to? Ask yourself that question. Now, another thing, the second point that I have is that moments like this reveal our emotions and our thoughts. So we can't ignore what is going on in us. I don't know, some of you may have been raised in families that emotion was bad, or some of you were raised in families where emotion was there, but it was always shut down. or maybe there was just some dysfunction going on. I don't know. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different view and a different experience, is what I was trying to say. But I have to say to you right now that whatever you are experiencing, whatever emotions that are running through you, whatever thoughts that you're having, they're legitimate. I never want to downplay how someone is feeling in a time of crisis. You know, I think I've been brought up at times in my life where I will have an emotion and I'll be bold and I'll share, this is how I'm feeling, only to be cut down and saying, well, that's not a Christian way of thinking. Well, I've learned over the years that there is no Christian way of thinking, or there's no Christian way of doing things. It's dealing with who you are. It's part of our process. It's part of who we are. If you're fearful, then we need to deal with that. If you're full of anxiety, then hey, we deal with that because it's real in you. And the only alternative, not the alternative, the antidote to those feelings is actually being honest with the Father, saying, this is how I'm feeling. Getting into that secret place, getting into that time with the Lord, saying, Lord, I don't know what to do. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of the virus attacking me. I'm afraid of the economic downturn. I'm afraid of losing my job, or if I've lost my job, I'm afraid of where my provision is going to come from. I'm just afraid. We have to deal with those. Those thoughts are okay because they're running through you. And remember, if it's important to you, it's important to Him. And as a good Father, He wants us to voice our feelings, voice our thoughts to Him. There's a story in I believe it's Kings, where Elijah went into the cave. And not Elisha, sorry, Elijah. Elijah was in the cave, and he just basically laid out his life before the Lord. He laid out all of his frustrations and all the things that he felt that he was doing. He laid them all out, and the Lord was like, yep, that's okay. And then here, what about this? And what about this? And he let them out. So I want to encourage you that there's no issue, there's nothing that could be running through you right now that the Lord is afraid of. But you've got to get them out. And if you're in a family and if you're quarantined out and you're really doing your best to social distance yourself, and you don't have that buffer with people, get on the phone, get on FaceTime, get on a Zoom call, talk to your spouse, talk to your, someone that you can. But more importantly, get even in front of the Lord and get into that quiet time and into the quiet place and just pour yourself out before Him. David did it many, many times. And like I said, Elijah, there's other times in the Bible where people were just honest with the Father, saying, I don't know what to do. And the Lord was just gracious and loving and compassionate. And He just said, this is what I want you to do. We're gonna become healthier when we do this. We're gonna become more emotionally stable. We're gonna become stronger as people if we can learn how to process our emotions and our thoughts in a way that's gonna actually bring us healing. The other thing that we can do now is the third thing is we need to determine who are we going to be during this time. I'm going to read this, just read it as I put it. Determine who you are going to be and what you will be during this season and after it passes. Determine who you're going to be and what you're going to be during this season and after it passes. Who will you be in this moment and after the season? Who are you going to be? What kind of person are you going to be develop in? Because see, this is changing us. This time of self-isolation, of physical distancing, of social distancing, whatever you're going to call it, it's changing who we are. Deanna is laughing because she's like, the first thing I'm going to do when I get back into people is I'm going to hug them. She's notoriously not a hugger. She's quiet but she's missing that aspect of people. She loves people, but she's determining when this is over, this is what I'm going to do. It's important that we actually make these decisions right now, because if we don't make decisions, we're just going to be drawn along. Do you know what I mean? It's like if we don't have a purpose, then whatever happens, we're just going to be like drawn along, move it along. But we have to have the forethought to say, okay, this is who I am. And if this is not who you are before this is a great opportunity to say, no, in this time, I'm declaring that this is who I am, and this is where I'm going to go, and this is who I want to be, the type of person that I want to be after this season is done. So right now, there's a lot of reactions going on. Reactions everywhere. And we're, maybe 3 weeks into this right now, and I've seen a difference in people's reactions. At first, it was crazy. Like there was just craziness going on. People were just reacting to the news. Oh, all of a sudden, there's directives from the government coming down, and all of a sudden everybody, just freaks out. The shelves at the stores are empty. There's no toilet paper. They're just reacting. But then there's those few people who's like, I'm not going to react. I'm going to respond with a right heart and a right way of doing things, and I'm going to change who I am. When this first came down, I can honestly say, when the government said, okay, we need to close and the businesses were closing, panic did not set it into my heart, but I wanted to see what needed to be done. I wanted to say, okay, who needs help? Does anybody need anything? And that's who I am right now. I'm always looking. I'm always saying, like, can I help? Can I do something that's going to help somebody? Because that's just part of my nature. So we need to be proactive in what we're doing right now. We need to be proactive in what we're doing and where we're going as an individual, as a house of hope. We have to be proactive and respond accordingly. So what's your reality in this season? Like, are you in the middle of unemployment? Have you been laid off? Is there some fear going forward about like how my needs going to be met? Like my needs, my physical, are the bills going to get paid? Are we going to eat? What is going on? How are we responding to the turmoil that is going on around us, and sometimes the turmoil that is going in us? How do we respond? What's our reality in this season? And again, it comes back to the very first point of what are we holding on to? Where is our hope? Where is our contentment? I'm reminded, and a few weeks ago I preached about this. It was the story about David and Goliath in 1 and 2 Samuel. So David, as a 13 or 14-year-old young man, wakes up one morning, and it was like a normal morning, and his dad says, hey, I'd like you to take the bread and the cheese to your brothers and find out news from the front. And David gets there, and he hears the challenge from Goliath. And he makes a decision at that point. He determined that this was not good enough. When he heard Goliath calling down curses and mocking God, and he's like, today, this is not going to happen on my watch. I'm here today, and I'm going to make a change. I'm going to determine that there's going to be a difference in because of my actions. So he didn't wake up in the morning thinking he was going to kill a giant. He didn't wake up that morning thinking anything different than it was going to be a normal day. But he walked into it, and he said, this is what's going to happen. Gathered his stones, walked out. You know the story. He walked into an opportunity. And I believe that this is what we have to offer the world, is that we actually say, not on my watch. This is not going to happen today. And we make a plan to help those around us. We see the opportunity in front of us, and we go, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And there's a number of people in House of Hope that are kind of on the front lines. Excuse me. They're on the front lines. And they're waking up every day, and they're dealing with case upon case upon case of people needing stuff. And they're the heroes. They are heroes because they're doing it. It's the same with anybody who would walk into an opportunity. So we can declare today as a house, not today, not on my watch. Will I let people go hungry? Will I let people be sick? Will I let people be lonely? It's our time to say, I'm going to be this. This is who I am. This is who God has made me. And I'm going to walk into this. I have an opportunity now to shine because we're in a season. Now the next question to ask. The next question to ask is, will this unite us or will this divide us? Will this crisis, I don't know, have another name for it. Will this season unite us or will this season divide us? I mentioned it a few minutes ago, but I've seen in the last 3 weeks almost a whole gambit of scenarios unfold within our city. You know, when it was first announced, it was like every person for itself, and we saw this, like it was sweeping the nation, it was sweeping North America. It was like, you know, there's no toilet paper. Didn't make sense, but people were responding out of fear. They were reacting out of fear, and then they responded out of that reaction, they responded with hoarding. And it was like, everybody's like, well, that's human nature. And I don't agree with that. I just believe it was fear that took over. And then all of a sudden, as time went on, people realized that they calmed down. They got into the sense of themselves like, wow, this is wrong. And then they started to actually reach out. And they started to rally around a need. They started to look and to help. And they've started to do things that made sense. And they started to rally around each other. And they started to rally around neighbors and family and see the needs around them and respond to those needs. You know, like many of you know, and if you live in Cranbrook, you know, there's at 7 o'clock. Well, this is around the world, but at 7 o'clock each night, there's people come out of their homes and they bang pots and pans and clap and honk horns and stuff in support of our healthcare workers. And there's birthday parades in Cranbrook, and I think there's a few others in other areas, but you know, we realize that our kids who are too young to understand why they can't have a birthday party, or it's their birthday and it's different. And so, you know, in our community, we have lady organized parades where cars would get together and they would just follow into a big parade and honk their horn as they go by the family with whose kid's birthday it is. You'd think, well, that's kind of cute, but as Deanna and I have gone on a few of these, we can see the joy and the hope that is released in these kids going, wow, there's still people that love us. There's people that care. You know, giving to those in need is another great way of uniting. You know, knocking on your neighbor's door. I have a story from one of our ladies here at House of Hope where she was in her house and she could hear the neighbor dog barking, and the dog was just incessant barking, and she thought that this is weird because the dog doesn't bark like that. So she went over to her neighbor's house and knocked on the door, and the dog was barking, and the door was unlocked, and she walked in and she called out, "Hello, are you there?" And she heard a help come from one of the rooms in the house, and she walked in, and this lady had fallen, and she was hurt. She had been laying there for several hours, couldn't get up. She was an elderly lady, and so she helped her up and took care of her. And since then, the relationship they've had has been one of friendship and good things, right? Whereas before it wasn't there. Just the simple act of helping a neighbor, getting to know them during this time, speaks volumes. It actually speaks Jesus to people. So is this going to unite us or is it going to divide us? I honestly believe that this crisis going on right now is going to unite us as a human race. We are going to actually be different. Our lives have slowed down for the most part. I can understand there's some are still working and stuff, but for the general population, it's going to slow us down and actually cause us to be intentional with people and have deeper communication, deeper connections with people. So around the world, this is not just local, but around the world, people are coming into who they were created to be by lending a hand and helping those around them. I saw a picture, a friend of mine posted this on Instagram, where it was a picture of a man who was on one floor. He had a balcony, and he discovered that his neighbor above him on the next floor was in the hospital with COVID, and he had a dog, and nobody knew this, and the dog was hungry, and so the picture is of the neighbor holding this bowl of food up every day so the dog could actually eat. And that's just like, it was just, wow, it's amazing how we are just doing things naturally. When we see a need, we meet a need, and it becomes natural. Carrie Lloyd, a lot of you know her. She told the story of just in her own apartment block. She just recently moved to Los Angeles, moved into an apartment block, and there was needs. And so she went to, I don't know where she went, but she bought a package of toilet paper. And then she just put a roll of toilet paper in front of every door in the complex and just said, "With love from Unit 2. Well, all of a sudden, there was communication from the units. And she discovered there was a wealth of friendship and connection simply because she put out a roll of toilet paper and said, "If you need me, I'm here." And she has amazing stories of what she's told of how this community is coming together and making sure that they're okay and making sure that they're connected in this time. And this is the same thing that we can do. We can be doing this with our neighbors in our neighborhoods. We can be doing this with church members. We can be intentional and just calling out and say, "Hey, how's it going? Do you need, take that 5 minutes and do a text or a FaceTime." And I know Zoom, like I've been inundated this last 2 weeks with Zoom meetings, and I love it. It's great. I want to connect with people. It's awesome. But it's us finding common ground and rallying around that. And right now in communities in need, we can actually meet the needs of people that are needing it, that are hurting. So then number 5, the fifth and the final thing that I want to talk about tonight this morning, is that our generosity will be tested in this season. Now, I want to reiterate, generosity applies to our whole self. It's not just our wallet, it's not my bank account, but it's actually my emotions, my time, my mind, my whole being. That's what generosity encompasses. Oftentimes when we say, well, we need to be generous, it means open up your wallet and give what's in there, or open up your bank account, and it's not just that. That's a part of it. Generosity, like I said, it's our emotions, it's our time, it's our mind, it's our physical needs. Oftentimes, and I think I may have said it today, I can't remember, but when we say that thank you for your generosity of our time, our energy, and our resources. That's the season that we're in right now, is that we have to look at what are we being generous with. Are we being generous with our time? Are we being generous with our emotional connection with people? I love people. I love hanging out. I love conversation as part of me being an extrovert. But I can tell you, I seem to be more busy now than I was 3 weeks ago because I'm more intentional with connecting with people around us. I have our leadership team, connecting with people in our House of Hope as our family, and just calling out and texting or phoning, and how are you doing? Are you okay? Do you need anything? It's that intentionality, and they're being generous with their time, and they're being generous with their emotions. I'm finding myself giving out more and more, and I love it. I don't mind, because we've actually created a culture within House of Hope for generosity. So it brings me back to the original thought of we've been created for such a time as this. All the things in the last 10 years that we've been building on, the cultures that we've been creating at House of Hope are for this time and the future. But wow, at this time we're saying like, yeah, I can be generous. I can be giving. I'm going to give financially to those who are in need. I'm going to give of my time, my emotional contact with my family, my emotional connection with my family around me, my friends, the people that are in my life, even the people that I don't know. We have to be generous. last Sunday, I had to, what was I doing? I was here at the church and I was tidying up something, and I discovered that Canada Post had dropped off a parcel card, and I hadn't seen it. It had been here for a while, so I thought, oh, I'll run down to Canada Post and pick up this card. Well, the parcel was made out to House of Hope, and it was our address, but it didn't have my name on it. And the lady at the counter, she says, I can't give you this. You have to prove who you are. And I had a choice at that time. Am I generous with my response to her, or am I going to hold back and I'm going to be grumpy? And I had a choice. I literally had a choice. And I found myself, it was around 12:30, and I found myself getting agitated because I just wanted my parcel. And I realized I hadn't eaten that day yet, and so I was grumpy. It was that Snickers moment, but I still had a choice. And so I asked her, I said, okay, what do I need to do to get this? And she was a little snippy. She goes, well, you need this and this and this. And I'm like, okay, no problem. I'll get the paperwork done and I'll be back. So then I had an idea, and I called a friend, and they verified my identity. So I went back to Canada Post and I said, hey, so-and-so just called and verified, they should have verified who I am. And she says, well, no, I'm not going to give it to you. I don't know who you are. Oh, I don't know who that person is. And I was like, again, I have a choice. And I said, no problem. Just if you could talk to somebody, because this person works in management. And the lady was, all of a sudden, something shifted in her demeanor. And she says, oh, does this person go to your church? And I was like, no, actually they did. But whatever. And she's like, oh, okay, well, that's really great. That's really nice. And something shifted. Like, I don't understand what it was, but something shifted in the atmosphere there. And she's like, oh, my husband and I just moved here and we can't find a church. And I thought, okay, I have a choice here to be generous with my compassion, with the way I react. And I was like, oh, okay, great. And we just had this conversation. And that wouldn't have happened had I decided to be stingy with my emotional release. And that's just one story of just some ways that we can be generous. We have to learn to have empathy and compassion to those who are worse off from us. We can always see that there's always going to be somebody who's in worse shape than we are. And if that's the case, then we have something to give. If somebody is worse than we are, then we can give. We can give of our time, our energy, our resources, whatever it takes. This is the season that we're in. We're in a season that we have to be generous, just like our Father is generous. Our time, our energy, our resources, our emotion, whatever we have, we give out of that. And out of that giving, we're going to receive, we're going to be refilled, we're going to be restored. And I want to say, in our generosity, we will be inconvenienced. North American or Western mindsets is we hate to be inconvenienced. If anything is an inconvenience, we're just like, I'm not going to do that. But this is the season to put aside our inconvenience, to put that aside and declare that we're going to be generous even when we're inconvenienced. Because while we may be inconvenienced, there's others who are destitute, and then they need what we have, and so we're going to give it. So we want to declare this morning that we will be a generous people with our finances, with our time, with our emotions, and with our minds. Every part of me will be generous this season. So that's all I have for this morning. That's kind of it in a nutshell. And so let's just pray. And then I want to pray for a couple of things that have popped up that I want to... Anyway, so let's pray. Father, I thank you that you have created us for such a time as this. You've created us to be a people of hope. You've created us to be a generous people who carry the life source of heaven, that you have called us to bring heaven to earth today, and that you are just releasing that grace upon us to be light in the darkness, to be a people who would ooze Jesus And so, Father, I bless you, and I bless those who are watching this morning, and I bless those who have tuned in and that who are just actually getting ignited with hope this morning. And Father, I just thank you for that. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, well, a couple